we're looking here at the Guitar Shop program, and this is a program that works the same way as the one in Chapter 4. And if you look here, you'll see in Chapter 4 we had a product manager and a product viewer. So they were two separate programs, and we went through both of them. Now in Chapter 5, what they've done is they've created a home page that presents both the manager and the viewer in a menu selection. You basically pick the one that you want, and it takes you to the appropriate page. In fact, I'll just show you here. The PHP page comes up, and it includes at the top a header, and at the bottom a footer. And then, of course, in the middle here, you've got your the body of your document. Now, it simply has two hyperlinks in it. One takes you to Product Manager, one takes you to Product Catalog. So very simple. But what's interesting about this is that this is a really nice way to build a template, because what you can do is put the starting part of each page up here in the header and the bottom stuff in the footer, and every one of your PHP documents will have these two things. And then in the center, you build essentially the guts of the page. So let's take a look at the header. The header starts the HTML document. So you've got your opening HTML tag, your head section where you include your style sheet, and you start your body. You have your first header, and it stops. Right? So what happens is, going back to the index page, all that stuff that you just saw essentially gets pasted right here. So it's almost as if you were to copy this code, and instead of including it, we just paste it right in. And so it's going to flow right down through. And when you get to the bottom, you have your footer include, so that's going to be this page. And again, you've got your closing stuff, the closing footer and the closing tags. If I took that stuff, copied it, and pasted it into my page instead of including it, I'd have this. Now the thing is, the designers want a consistent look and feel across the whole application. So this part right here never changes. And this part down here never changes. By design, right? So we simply take these two pieces and we put them into a header and a footer, and then we simply include instead of write the code in. So by doing that, we basically have a template. Every one of our pages will be structured the same way, and the only difference is going to be what you stick in between the includes. Again, which is essentially the guts of the page, whatever you're trying to show. So, with that said, we're going to dive into the product catalog first, and then I'll show you the product manager, and we'll go from there. Now let's take a look at the directory structure for a minute. The file you're looking at right now is this file right here. It's the home page of the website, and the view contains the header and footer files I just showed you. Notice you're including view/header.php. That's because here's where you start, and you're going to go into the view folder and bring up the header. You do the same thing with the footer. If you pick Product Manager, and again, here's where you're at, this is the folder. It's going to go to Project Manager, go into it, and just display the default page, which is index. And it will do the same thing with the catalog. It'll go into the folder, bring up the default page, so that there's no web page in these hrefs, but it's implicit because you're putting the folder names in. Notice my view folder, again, my header and footer in the view here, all right? Notice also there is a model folder which has these three files in it. Notice that the model and the view, are both above these two folders, the product catalog and product manager. Also notice that's also true of images, errors, and cart. And then, of course, the style sheet. So when we go into the product catalog, we have these three files. And let's take a look at them. I'm going to close these. We've already looked at these. And let's take a look at the home page for the product catalog. Notice here you're requiring three files, and that's like include. It's very similar to include in the sense that it takes the file and it essentially pastes it right where this statement goes. So what's happening here basically is this. This is the file, or I'm sorry, this is the page that we're on. We're going to go up a level, which is the dot dot slash model. So we're going to go up into the model folder, and we're going to include database.php. We're also going to do that for product DB and for category DB. All three of them are coming out of the model. So let's take a look at these files. Okay, so first off, database. Now you've seen this before, all right? This is the code that sets up a PDO object, which occurs right here. And here are all the parameters. We have our user and our password and the connection, which is using localhost. My Guitar Shop 1 is the database. We're attempting to open a connection here, and if that fails, this is where we're at, okay? If it fails, we're going to go up a level up here, then we're going to go up to errors, go into it, and pop up database error. And database error will simply include our header and footer, and this time see the dot dot slash view, because you are, at this point in time, your header is database error. So you have to go up a level and then over to view and down into that header to get to it. So you always have to take the file you're at and consider how to get to where you need to go. But here's the deal with this, right? Your home page is in product catalog, and this is it right here. And you're including this database error file if something goes wrong. This is going to get, the code is going to get pasted right in here. So database error.php is a code snippet, and it's going to be used inside of this product catalog folder. So the path that you're going to use here is not for this specific file, it's for the file that this is being placed into. And this code is being placed into product catalog. Now the thing about it is they're always going to put this snippet into a subfolder. So you can always safely go up and over to errors. But you have to be careful that that will always be true. Wherever you include this file, that will always work. You want to make sure of that. Right? So, with that said, we have our database, our connection, and DB is our database object. If we have an error, we've got that covered. Next thing we've got is the product DB. Again, this is coming out of the model. Remember that the model consists of the PHP files that represent the data of the application. The view is the user interface, and the controller, it gets requests from the users, which is coming through the view. It also gets data from the model. So it directs traffic, basically, from the back and forth between the view and the model. There's a really nice diagram on page 161 that shows you how the MVC pattern is structured, by the way, and it's worth checking out that particular diagram. So we're talking about product underscore DB. What is that doing? Well, notice you have a bunch of functions in here. All right? So it's simply including all these functions in our index file. Category DB, a couple more functions, and it'll put those functions into this page. So what we're basically doing here is we are gluing together the model and the view into one document that we're presenting back to the caller. That makes this file right here, index.php, the controller. See, because the controller is essentially including the model functions so that the controller can call the model. So everything inside of the model folder, here, these three files, that's the model. And as you can see, it's including the model. And the file, index.php, is the controller. So the controller has access to the model. Now check this out down here. If you look into code, in the code here, you have an include product underscore list. You have an include product underscore view. Well, this is the page you're on. So we're going into, oh, I'm sorry. This is the page you're on. And so you're either going to be going to this page or to this page. So this is the controller. It includes the model up at the top. And we'll talk more about the view here shortly. Before we talk about the controller and the view, we really need to deal with the model. So what I'm going to do is start with that. So the model it consists of database, product DB, and category DB. And we just talked about the database. It's very simple. It establishes a connection to the database, and that's it. But what does product DB do? Let's take a look at that. Again, this is a model function. All of these functions are in the model. The model is where you access the database. At the model, you don't do any user interface code at all. The model shouldn't know anything about the UI, nor should there be any code that handles the UI here in the model. It's strictly working with the data. So as you can see, it's just a set of functions. And that's typical because the model is just sitting there waiting to be called by the controller. So you don't want to put, you don't want the model to be running the show, basically. The model is just a bunch of functions that you can call it, the controller can call if it needs them. And look at all the varieties of things you can do. You can get all the products by the category. You can get one product by its ID. You can get all the products by the category. By the way, you pass the ID in, and it gives you all the products for that category. Here, you pass in a product ID, you get the product. Here, you pass in a product ID, and you delete the product. Here, you're adding a product, passing it the ID, category, the code, the name, and the price. So all the things it needs to create a product is passed into the function, and then it creates it. So we can add, delete, get products, and then we can get all the products from the category into one specific product. So that's what's happening. All of this code enables us to get, add, and delete products. In the category file, you can get a category by its ID, and it will return the name back. Or you can go get categories, and it gives you everything back. I just like having my code formatted a certain way, and it's a little bit, well, the book likes to put, the opening curly brace like that. I prefer them to be lined up. It's just a convention. But first of all here, notice this global DB. Why does it say global there? Well, it's because that DB variable was created when we included the database PHP file. And all we're saying here is that that variable is a global variable. If we didn't put global there, it would create a DB variable local to this function. And that's not what we want. We don't want to create a new DB variable. We want to use the one that we already have. But you can't just put $DB in. You have to say global $DB. So that's what we've got there. Then we have our query. This is a string that was built. It's $query. It's equal to, and that's just simple SQL. Select star from categories, order by category ID. So there's no filter here. It's just going to simply get all the categories. They're going to be sorted by their IDs. There's no parameters in the query, so it simply prepares it, executes it, and returns back the statement. The statement is going to be a set of category records. Then there's this one. This one you're passing in a category ID. So the query selects star from categories. Of course, the star means all the fields in the row of the table. So you're getting all the categories where the category ID equals category ID. Now again, as you recall, this is a parameter. It's not actually going to put that as you see it into the query. It's going to plug in whatever is bound to that parameter. So this line of code right here is where you plug in the real category ID into the string. And we talked about parameterized queries in the last chapter, so I'm not going to go back through that, but that's what's happening. Executes the query. Now it fetches this one. It assumes that a category ID gives you back one record, one category. And that makes sense because the category ID is the primary key of the table. It has to do that. So it doesn't call fetch all, it calls fetch. And the category is what you'll get back. So it closes the cursor. It goes in. Now, keep in mind, category, this variable, is the record that came back from the query. The $category is not the category name only. It's all the fields in that table for that specific record, and they're all bottled up into an array. So we need to get the specific element in the array called category name, and that's what we're doing right here. We're going to the category array. We're indexing it by its name, which is here, category name, and we're returning back that string, and that is what we want to return back out of the function. And that's what it does. So pretty simple, right? So there are a couple of functions we can use to deal with categories. Now when we're dealing with products, it's very similar. Okay, so first off, get products by category. The query is select star from products where category ID equals, and then the placeholder, the parameter here. And this returns back potentially a lot of products, more than just one. So we do a fetch all instead of a fetch. And we return the entire set of records. Get product gets a specific product based on the ID you pass in. So the query selects star from products, where product ID equals a specific product, and you bind it, execute, close, and return, just like you have been doing. Delete product. Again, same approach. The query is delete from products, where product ID equals placeholder. It's very important to put the filter on a delete statement. If you forget and just say delete from products, guess what's going to happen? It's going to blow away everything in the table. Not good. So always add a filter to your delete. Add product takes the 4 parameters that are needed, and it creates a query, insert into products. The fields are put in parentheses. These are the names of the fields. And then the values come next. Those are in parentheses. And here are where you put your placeholders for those 4 things, those parameters. And then you bind those 4 things here. So you pass them in, you plug them into the query. Because this one adds a product, there's nothing to return back. You just execute the query, and you close the cursor, and you're out of the function. So that is the model for this application. Again, just a bunch of functions that you can call to get products and categories in and out of the database. So what I'm going to do is stop this section of this presentation. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the controller, and that will be the product list and product view. So we'll do that in the next video. We'll see you then.